Scott Farquhar, welcome to 7:30.
Thanks for having me.
We're here to talk about the present and the future of AI in Australia, but one question for you first. Is there anything in the evolution of AI that scares you?
Look, I think there's some crazy out there scenarios of things that could happen in the future, but I think the chances are very low. And when I look at the opportunities it provides us as a nation, as a culture, it's a new tool that we get to use, and it gets to make us a lot more productive. It's going to make our jobs a lot more fun. So I focus a lot on the positives.
Why are the chances low? We think about what happened with the internet, and it produced, obviously, incredible opportunities, but it also introduced us to a great deal of shared darkness. Why are you so confident that the wilder, bad scenarios for AI are low possibility outcomes?
I think with most technologies, there's a positive and a negative. When we went from horses to cars, there was some positives and negatives, and we wouldn't go back to horses today. And so what we do is we adopt all the positives and we try out ways to ameliorate the negatives. And I think that AI is similar to that. And it's a huge transformative technology. It's going to change the way we work. It has huge opportunities for Australia. And I think the positives way outweigh the negatives, but we're going to have to work out how to live with the negatives or evolve the system that we work in to deal with them.
Do you think that we should just take a moment to tell people what it is? There's, obviously, nearly everyone is using AI, whether they know they are or not at the moment. But for anybody who's watching who is not sure about what it is, tell them what it is.
If your app, Google or Waze or Apple got you to work on time today by routing you around some traffic, that is AI. If your Spotify recommended you a song to listen to that you hadn't listened to before, that's AI. If you use ChatGPT, it's probably the most well-known, but Google and many others have large language models that you use and you chat with a bot, that's AI. And so there's so much of today's society that you don't realize you interact with. And of course, there's the large language models and OpenAI that came out 2 years ago that really ushered in a big sort of change about how we think about AI.
Now, you want to talk about the innovative possibilities of AI in Australia. You're going to the Treasurer's roundtable to talk about it. But just to understand, you want Australia to stop being a passive consumer of AI. But how does Australia compete with the US tech companies with their boundless billions of dollars? Is it really possible?
So if we want a prosperous nation in Australia, we have to be creating technology and exporting it to the world. And one of the big opportunities we have is to be the exporter of data centers to our region. And a data center is a whole bunch of computers put in a big cold box, somewhere and connected to the internet. And we are building large numbers of these. And so a big data center might be about $5 billion worth of expense over a 10-year period in terms of constructing it and the chips that need to be there and the power and water to cool it all. So these are big investments, and there will be hundreds of those that we built in our region over the coming years. And I believe Australia, because of our system of law, because of our cheap and abundant green power, because of our we can actually build these things quite cheaply, actually, surprisingly, given our expensive labour force. We actually have good expertise building these very large projects. So given all of that, we have an opportunity to be the data centre provider for the region.
But just on that, I mean, the Americans and the Chinese are already obviously building a lot more than us, and they each have all or some of those things. Why Australia?
So there will be a need for regional data centres. So there are data centres in the US serving US customers. There'll be data centres in Australia serving Australian customers. But there'll also be data centres serving Singapore customers, Malaysian customers, Philippine. I'll give you an example. ChatGPT, many people use it. There are more users of ChatGPT in Indonesia and Vietnam than in the United States. And so there's a lot of people in this growing region who are going to use digital services, and they are going to need data centres. And they can be built here in Australia, or they can be built in Singapore or somewhere else. They will get built over the next 5 years, and I hope they get built here.
Let's talk about regulation, because there's been debates in Australia about whether we need a specific AI Act, how we regulate AI. Do you think we need specific laws to regulate AI?
With all new technology, there'll be new things we need to worry about. Because AI is so broad, however, it touches how you get to work driving, it touches recommendations for your playlist, it covers chatbots, it covers many other use cases out there. I don't think a single AI bill necessarily makes sense.
But do you accept that the desire for regulation is a healthy one or not?
I think that as a society, we should look to our politicians to keep us safe, when things are out there and set the rules of engagement for businesses to play with. I do also think that with early technologies, it's very difficult to know what the harms will be and what the appropriate legislation should be. And so I do think government should take a bit of a wait and see for things that aren't immediately obvious. And for many of the things, the harms that we can see now, they're covered by existing regulation.
But let me put the words of a former Microsoft executive to you. He said, tech companies can't be trusted to build artificial intelligence without laws forcing them to do the right thing. He should know what he's talking about, right?
Like all businesses, you need laws and rules to know what is acceptable in the population. And so there will need to be legislation around the usage of these things. I don't see at the moment like the clear and pressing need for an AI Act that says certain things. Most of it is covered today by existing legislation.
You want changes to Australia's copyright law to allow exemptions for AI companies to mine Australian content for text and data for free. Why do you want that?
So copyright's an interesting one. If I go back a little, copyright exists to basically give artists who create something a right to almost all the uses of it. And we have a thing called fair use, which says actually society really needs to use it for certain cases. For example, in a legal case, it can be used. In a news article, it can be used. It can be used for parody and satire, which we think of like, of course you can use that, but that was only a recent addition to the Copyright Act. And so, whereas the US has a very much broad exemption that says all transformative technologies have a broad fair use exemption. So what I'm saying is AI is a broad and transformative technology. At the moment, there is no fair use exemption. We don't say what is fair use, and we don't say what is not fair use. So at the moment, all AI usage of mining or searching or going across data is probably illegal under Australian law. And I think that hurts a lot of investment of these companies in Australia. So I think we should have a conversation about what we should have, what is fair use for these models.
So I don't want to get bogged down in an argument about what is transformative or not, because that is at the core of the law. Even in America, you have to prove that your second use of the material is transformative. But how do you explain to Australian artists that an AI company using their material without recompense is not theft?
So I think everyone would agree if you use AI to copy an artist directly and create a song in their style, that's probably not fair use. I do think people would say that, hey, if people are going to sit down with a digital companion, an AI song creator, and they collaboratively work with an AI to create something new to the world, that's probably fair use. And so I do think we should have this conversation around, as a society, what do we want the fair use to be?
But right now, AI companies are just gobbling up all of that material for free. That's what the artists are calling theft. Do you think that should stop?
I think that the benefits of the large language models and so forth that we've got outweigh those issues. So
hang on, you're saying that the benefits of the large language models outweigh the rights of individual Australian artists to create distinct Australian content?
I think you're saying, do I think that these models going out and training themselves on the entire internet?
Yes.
I think there are benefits to that. We have to work out what is fair use for these AI models. I don't think it is nothing, that they can't do anything. I also don't think that it is every you can't replicate an existing artist out there. I don't think that's fair use either.
But when you created your company, Atlassian, if another business had come along, a new business, a new iteration of the way business is done, to use your own intellectual property without recompense to you, would you have regarded that as fair?
If it was a new and novel way, then that's fair.
You would have been happy to yield your intellectual property for no reward?
As a society, we say that everyone gets
What
copyright.
about you, Scott Farquhar, at that time with something that you had created through your own skill, blood, sweat and tears? If someone had come along and taken that from you and used it to benefit themselves with no benefit to you, you would have thought that was fair?
If it had been transformative, yes. If someone had used my intellectual property to compete with me, then I think that is an issue, like directly with me. If they'd used all the intellectual property of all the software on the world to help people write software better in the future, I think that is a fair use.
Let's bring it back to an individual case, for example. Should Midnight Oil be able to say no to a large or small, an AI company using their body of work without them being recompensed for that?
Let me give you an example. 20 years ago, when iPods came out, it was illegal to take a CD that you owned and put that music on an iPod you owned, because it was illegal in the Copyright Act. And I think these days we'd say, well, that seems silly that it's illegal in the Copyright Act, and we updated in 2006 to say, well, that is actually a permitted use. And we said, what does it mean? You can't take someone else's CD, it's one you own, and you put it on things.
But you've paid for that at some point in the chain, haven't you? In this case, in the case of the Midnight Oil catalogue of songs, no one is paying them anything to use their material.
In similar that ABC doesn't pay people when they quote an article.
For news, that's for news fair dealing.
Yes, but to say there's a fair dealing aspect for all of these use cases.
So Midnight Oil, in my example, can't say no. You don't think they should have the right to say no to their catalogue of work being exploited by a tech company to create another form of chat GPT or whatever it is?
So as a society, I think we should look at what is fair use. I think it's if they're creating something transformative, then I don't think you say no in the same way they can't say no to a news site saying that. The same way they can't say no to loading that onto your iPod. We as a society say, what is fair use? And again, I don't think, if you want to copy Midnight Oil and create the next version of their songs, I don't think that is a fair use. If you want to say, hey, I'm going to create a AI that helps you create all sorts of music, in the same way today, if someone created a Taylor Swift song and inspired by them and created one exactly the same, that wouldn't be fair use. But there are plenty of artists that feel inspired by people that have come before them. I think every artist would say they've been inspired by the artists that came before them.
Yeah, but most of them have bought that Bob Dylan album that they're using to inspire them now. They're not expecting to have had all of that material for free along the way. At some point, Bob Dylan got paid to write his album.
You have to look at that these days in terms of how that all works.
Let me just come back to what's going to happen. You're going to go to the Treasurers Productivity Summit. In there, you're going to be talking about, they're going to be talking about jobs. The ACT will be there. They want the union to have the power to insist that they are consulted on whether or not AI is introduced into a workforce. What will you say to Sally McManus if you see her about that?
Look, I think that unions have a great role to play in the evolution of jobs in a workplace. I think they always played a great role there. I think the idea that AI is or isn't in the workplace is kind of doesn't make that perfect sense, because you can't ban someone using an AI on their way to work to get there. But I do think unions have a role to play.
I think the question is, if a company wants to transform the way it works using AI, which will have an impact on the workforce, the unions want to have a say in that. Should they have a say? Should they be allowed to have a veto, which is essentially what they're asking for?
I think unions should be involved in all workplace evolution over time. And if you think about AI, there's going to be jobs. AI is going to make every job better and more productive. For some jobs, that means we're going to have more of them. So if we are more productive at making data centres, more of them will exist in Australia. For other jobs, say call centre workers, if you make people more productive, we're going to need less of those ones. So I think unions should be involved in both of those. I'm asking the unions to help us train the new jobs and let's get them done faster so that it's not a 4-year apprenticeship. And I'm asking unions to help us evolve for the jobs that there are less of. How do we get those people into new jobs? I don't think a veto makes sense there, but I think collaboration to work out what the future looks like makes sense.
And should there be an obligation on companies to retrain workers?
That's a longer conversation. There's a couple of things there. Once upon a time, it was the responsibility of every company to train every worker themselves. And that was in a world where you had employment for life and you trained an employee and they worked for you for the rest of their career. And then we wanted job mobility, so we said, well, actually, let's train people outside of workplaces so then they can move around different jobs. And we said that, universities should be paid partly by the person benefiting and partly by the state, because everyone's benefiting in this world. I don't think it makes perfect sense for companies that are downsizing to retrain people for the jobs of the future. I can't see why someone leaving a call centre job should be retrained by the call centre to build a data centre. That doesn't make sense for me. But you could make an argument around stronger safety nets for jobs, for people that have lost their job.
I mean, we talk about the AI revolution as being a bigger revolution than the one that was brought forward by the Industrial Revolution. Now, historically, in that case, the benefits for workers took a long time to arrive. How do you prevent the same damage this time round with a change on this scale, that it isn't the poorest workers in Australia who will pay the price for this and wait a very long time for the benefits?
Well, I mean, the Industrial Revolution was when we ended up with a 5-day working week, and we ended up with minimum wages. We ended up with
a long time.
Yes, but these evolutions end up nothing is straightforward, and so.
But how do we protect people this time?
The way I think about it is that the job losses that come from AI are going to happen globally because they make people more productive. And we say we want more productivity in this nation. Well, that means doing more with less. The opportunities that we have as a nation we need to be active about pursuing those. Data centres are going to get built. They could be built in Australia or they can be built in Singapore. And so the reason I'm advocating so strongly for this is that we can make some decisions as a nation to adopt AI or be on the value chain of that. That will make a big difference to how productive we are as a nation. And that's what I'm advocating for.
So what are you going to use that opportunity to persuade the Treasurer to listen to you on? Most of all, data centres, yes?
Data centres I've talked about. Tech trades are really important. At the moment, it takes 4 years to skill or reskill someone. And if you look at an electrician in a data centre, maybe we can get them trained in 6 months or 12 months and get them out there working as opposed to 4 years. So I really want to work with the union to create tech trades. The third one is government. As the business moves faster with AI, government will become more of a bottleneck. And there's a huge opportunity for government to adopt AI internally, particularly in how they interact with the public. An example I said in my speech was around development applications and getting a house approved. At the moment, that can take months, and it's a pretty uncertain process. Imagine a world where we have the same rules, same laws, but you could get your approval in minutes, not months. How many more houses would we build, and how many more houses would also be compliant with the standards if we could do that and adjust your application? Or childcare subsidies, another one that takes a long time. And so if we could do those things and move them faster, we're going to spend less time interacting with government, and we're going to have more of the things we want.
You've just left a major position. What did you learn about yourself in those years at Atlassian?
I think someone said there's a phrase, no matter where you go, there you are. And so sometimes, you think things are due to the environment that you're in, but actually they're things about yourself. And so I've been on a learning journey about myself over that time, and also seeing what else is out there in the world and how I can have an impact.
What did you learn in that long journey?
I might need some more thinking music for that particular one.
Thinking music. What is your thinking music?
In my thinking music, I'm a big Pink Floyd fan from many days. I probably haven't outgrown my teenage years. No, I think what I learned about myself is that, again, all the things I've been good at Atlassian, of setting a big vision and getting things done, can apply in other areas as well. And I'm taking on the chair of the Tech Council of Australia, spending more time on philanthropy, which is something that I'm getting better at. And so there's a big world out there, and I'm getting involved in it.
And you're happy for the big AI companies to hoover up Pink Floyd in the meantime?
I think that the benefits of AI, I think we are going to have a huge amount of benefits, and I hope we as a nation set ourselves up to have some of those benefits accrue to Australia.
All due to Pink Floyd. Scott Farquhar, thank you very much indeed for talking to us.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.